What's your why?
I'm just one teacher in a building full of teachers, and you just think every story matters. And when we really hear each other's story and we understand our why, how meaningful and how exciting to just move forward, trek forward, all on the same mission.
That's the voice of 2023 North Dakota Teacher of the Year finalist Abby DuBord from Elk Ridge Elementary in Bismarck. You're listening to What's Your Why? I'm Tom Gerhardt from North Dakota United, along with 2022 North Dakota Teacher of the Year Bret Dockter. We're here to uplift educators and education.
We would like to start off today just kind of getting to know you a little bit. Would you tell us a little bit about where you teach, what's your area of content maybe, and then how many years have you been part of education?
Yeah. So I am a first grade teacher in Bismarck. I was at Centennial Elementary School for my first 3 years of teaching. This is my fourth year of teaching, and I moved to Elk Ridge Elementary School. It was one of two new schools we built in Bismarck. So a few of actually like 100 of our students at Centennial were moved to this school with the boundary shift, which meant so we're some teachers. So I volunteered to come up here and start a new adventure, and it's been really nice. But I have taught first grade all 4 years. And then prior to that, I worked, probably 5 years in either like after school care, nannying, babysitting, those types of things from like the age of 14.
How did you get into education? Do you have a story that this is something you've always known that you want to do, or is this did you come to this path from a different direction?
I had some family members who worked in education, so they would bring me like the old school overhead projectors with like the films you would put on top, and I'd play school all the time as a kid. I would like make my aunts and uncles and grandparents and my mom, everybody play school with me. Bless their hearts. I was very dedicated, but when it came to high school and kind of my career path, I was determined to go into the medical field. I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist with all of my heart. That was my goal. So I got my CNA license while I was still in high school and was working at the hospital. And I just found that I wasn't very happy. I loved my patients and I liked the work that I did, but it just didn't feel like a forever job for me. And I knew I was young, but I was starting to question, is that really what I wanted to do? So actually kind of a full circle moment. On the other side of this classroom I'm sitting in is my good friend, Robin. And we worked at Blast together, which is an after school program here in town. And we were out at recess watching the kids, and we were both in the same kind of boat. Wondering what to do next. We had just finished 2 years at BSC, and we were trying to decide like, hey, we really need to pick our major now. And the words she said were, if I ever had a job that didn't feel like this, I don't think I would want to do it. And that was really challenging because school had always come easy to me. So I felt like there was some pressure to doctor, lawyer, engineer, those types of things. But I realized that just because school is somewhat easy for me and I like to learn doesn't mean that I have to go into, an 8+ year program to prove my worth. I could actually share that love of learning with students and make an impact that way. So it was a quick change, but she said that, and it was one of those nuggets that is like forever in my brain where I'm like, yep, that was the day. Like I chose education. So from there, I went to the University of Mary and got my undergrad in elementary education with a minor in special ed. And then just last December, I graduated from NDSU with my master in educational leadership.
So it sounds like you have people that kind of led you to this path. Can you share with us a little bit about some of the mentors you've had and how they shaped you throughout your career?
Yeah, I do definitely have some mentors that were family members that really just kind of, from probably the day I was born, told me that they would support me and I could be anything I wanted to be, and to really just instill just a love of life, but also a desire to fulfill the passions you have and that self-confidence and belief. Those would be people like my mom, my grandparents, very special to me. My aunt and my uncles have always really been in my corner. Tight-knit family. So I have to give a lot of credit to how I was raised. But when I talk about growing older and having more professional mentors, I do think of Robin Buchholz. She is also a friend, but somebody I definitely look up to. like I said, we started at Blast, like split ways, and somehow ended up being coworkers at this new school. And our rooms are side by side. So it's been really special. But she's just been a person who has been so empowering to me. Really is a creative thinker. So will listen and then can really take what I'm saying and help me align what I'm thinking or where I want to go with it and encourage me to move forward and to take those risks. I also had I have a lot of great coworkers, but my very first instructional coach, Rhonda Getz, was very impactful to me. She just rallied around me as a new teacher and was ready to listen and support me in any way I needed. She is a person who looks after your heart before your actions and just really wants to make sure that you're doing okay. And as a new teacher, I definitely needed that. And then from there, at my new school, I really just feel like all of my colleagues have been people who have really raised me up and have taken on this challenge together. So I haven't been in it too long. I have some solid mentors I go to for support, but really I think in education, it's a team effort. And I can't look at my career or my life and pick out just a couple. I would be listing names for quite a long time, but those are just a few.
I do love the fact that your friend and you got kind of the same moments together. That is a great story, and something that I think is so powerful that both you came to this moment and now you're back together. And I think those kids were very fortunate to have you guys.
I agree. We multiple times, we actually have a selfie because the doors in this building, or not the doors, but the classrooms are connected by doors on each side of the wing. And we have a picture like Elk Ridge was in construction and she's on her side of the door and I'm on my side. And we both like stuck our heads in and took a picture. We're like, what? Like not at all planned, but just really cool how our paths crossed again.
I'm really interested in your perspective on this, somebody that has a handful of years in the profession, but also is close to a younger generation. What are some of the challenges and issues that you think are facing educators today?
Gosh, I've said it before, but education is like a long game effort, right? Like you don't get this instant gratification all of the time. You will sometimes, but not all of the time. So perseverance is definitely key. And I think when we look at a lot of the challenges, even since I've been in education, you have the good old COVID. My first year was teaching with COVID, and it really changed a lot of things. It changed the perception of educators, especially from the outside perspective. Education just started to feel really targeted. A lot of things that we were doing, it was like the hearts behind teachers were so pure and genuine. But I felt like just the perspective on the profession was maybe lowered. And to each his own, right? But things were not perfect during COVID. And that's where I really saw my first, like I always thought of teachers as somebody to respect, somebody to look up to as a student myself. So it was really interesting to be on the other side of it. And I don't think that I saw any specific teacher, right? Like being criticized, but it just felt like education as a whole. And that was discouraging. And when you're looking for the purpose in what you do and you feel like people aren't valuing what you do or the reason why you're there, that can be really discouraging. So I think that's definitely one. The next one I've seen that has been really difficult as well is just the shortages of professionals. And I know that a lot of people have left the profession. A lot of people have considered leaving the profession. And it makes those who are in the profession, it is a really tricky situation because there's a lot of shoes to fill and a lot of needs that need to be met. And no one person can do it all on their own. I mean, even myself, like I do my best to meet the needs of all 22 of my students, but I have great colleagues, I have coaches, I have specialists in this building that support me. And even when one of those people are absent, whether it's me or them, like you can feel the absence because you just need each other. So those are two that have really been more difficult as I've started my career, is just like making sure and wanting to feel valued and appreciated in what you do, because we do really care. Teachers have huge hearts. We're not in it for much more other than to share the love of learning and to impact the next generation. We really have students' best interests in mind. And then also just making sure that we have the resources we need. And specifically in my case, the resources is like human capital, human capacity.
as a newer teacher, what have you seen change over the years since you started and now have progressed?
Gosh, I feel like I joke because I haven't had, I call it a normal year yet. Every year something's changed, whether it was COVID or I moved schools. I also say I can teach anywhere. So maybe that's one thing for sure that can change is just the idea and the concept of education. Like I could teach on my couch when I was in quarantine. I could teach from my classroom. My classroom that I'm in now was still under construction when I started the school year. So I taught in a collaboration space. So I feel like the whole concept of teaching has become a little bit flexible. We know that we can learn in a lot of different areas and different places. The other thing, though, I've noticed too, is after I taught 6 or 7 months before we were sent home for COVID. But in my graduate program, we had a lot of conversation about the concept of education, and there's so much information at our fingertips. So what is it that sets a teacher, a physical human being, apart from a video online? Because if I want to learn how to fix my bike tire, I don't need to necessarily call my dad. I could YouTube it. So that has been a big shift of how can I in my classroom and how can we as a district and as a state and a nation really elevate the teaching profession to make it more than just feeding information. And I think it was a quick reality check that people can learn from anywhere, from really anybody. So really to elevate ourselves in the work we do and to make sure that we're just being super intentional about how we present it. And yeah, like I said, the other piece I think about education that's changed a little bit, I talked more of the negative side of just the critical eyes that have been on teachers in education. But I also need to talk about the more positive side because I've been surrounded by a lot of support, specifically from my community. There's a Facebook page out there like Bismarck Mandan parents supporting teachers. And you can say hey, we're doing this project. We need pumpkins. And all of a sudden you have all these pumpkins you need. So as much as I think that there has been maybe an emphasis on what hasn't been going so well in education, I just felt a lot of support and also gratitude. I feel like I've seen families just step up. They're like, what do you need? Tell me what you need. Do you need an extra body? Can I volunteer? We have extra books. Do you want to pick them up? Where could we donate them? Do you know somebody? So I feel like it could have been, just being in the profession a little bit longer and being more comfortable with those conversations. But I just felt like a big hug wrapped around me from my students and our stakeholders. So I'm very grateful for that as well.
Well, and just I want you to articulate that thought or take it a little bit further, just because we want to talk about hope and positivity. Yeah. This podcast and some of the other things that maybe energize you that you're really looking forward to. Any thoughts come to mind?
Yeah, gosh. I think every year it's such a fresh slate, but I just get excited. I'm excited that there are 20 some new students in my room and looking to the future. I think there are so many great opportunities right now for collaboration. Opportunities for community partnerships, opportunities for those authentic real world experiences that we can give students that they might not receive anywhere else. And those are the things that really get me fired up. And when I think about the hope, I think about that big community hug. And I know I just had a meeting before this podcast and we were talking about for our climate and culture at our school, what we wanted to do for January. And we had this little goal tracker activity. And we had people saying oh, I have connections to this person who could donate this type of food. Oh, I have connections to this business owner. Maybe they'd want to stop in and do a Zumba class. Just really bringing people together. And that's from, an adult perspective. But just last week, I had 2 North Dakota service members stop in and they wanted to share about the work they did before Veterans Day. And our whole first grade team was able to our students were able to write letters to actually one of my parents, students' parents. Her troop is deployed right now. So very connected. And I just feel like I've seen such a cool step in that direction where our community wants to be a part of our students' learning and our students are so excited to be a part of what's going on in the community. So those are some things I'm really looking forward to and that I've continued to see grow even from, my first year of teaching until now.
I absolutely 100% agree with the idea of community involvement and bringing those people and those, I would say, stakeholders in to your classroom. I just love that when I hear that you talk about that. And some of the best teaching experiences I've had, I believe, have been when I brought outside people in and my kids have gotten to see and apply what they're learning in these real world situations. I think that's genuine, authentic learning right there. And I commend you for that. That's a great thing. And I want to build off of that a little bit and have you share maybe a moment or story, Abby, where you were teaching or a student has made a difference in your life or in what you're doing.
Yeah. Gosh, I was just talking about this the other day. There are so many moments. And like I mentioned at the beginning, like a lot of what we do in education is like long game, right? Like you have little moments every day that are definitely wins and you celebrate. But especially in first grade, like they're 6 and 7. So it's really fun to see them as like high school football players or, out volunteering or leading a group, something like out in the community. And I think those are those big wins for me where it's like, not that it's at all about me, but like, I'm just so honored that I had a little part in their story and who they're becoming. And I hope with the time I have that it's a good positive impact for who they become and preparing them for their future. But a story that specifically comes to mind really had nothing to do with academics. And I think as much as we know education is about academics, at the beginning of all of it is relationships. And I had a student a couple of years ago who came in for open house and truly was just like a little overwhelmed. Kind of all over the place, trying to get situated and settled into the classroom. And this particular student, I know, just like wasn't very comfortable with the concept and idea of school based on previous circumstances that happened. And I knew that coming in, but I really wanted to be conscious. Like, I don't want to know everything. I want this year to be a fresh start. And as the year went on, like definitely different behaviors occurred, but there was just such a cool connection between being given like an opportunity for a second chance and just like having those expectations. Year goes on, tons of growth. Like it felt like a really great year. But the moment it all hit me was the next year. At open house, this student came in and instead of being overwhelmed and all over the place, came in and sat so nicely in the entryway of my classroom and waited patiently just to say hi. Gosh, and those are the moments where it's like what you do matters. And it changed the trajectory of education for that one specific student. Just the other day, we went and got frozen yogurt together. That's what education's about. That's what matters. And so when I think about like a specific moment, I just like naturally am drawn to that one. But there are also, I think it's important to address like those little everyday moments. I was just teaching addition and subtraction and thought like I had this little realization to myself, like we talk about, like opposites a lot. And I was like, what if I connect what we've been talking about kind of with reading and the language of reading to the language of math. And I'd switched a few things in my lesson and all of a sudden you could see like light bulbs going on. And that's more of like an immediate impact that you're knowing you're making for the future. So yeah, it really goes both ways with relationships, with academics, but gosh, when you can tangibly see the difference in your students' lives, like that's when you're reminded that this is why I do what I do.
What advice would you give to new educators as they enter the profession and we want to keep them?
Yeah. Well, first off, if you're considering education, go observe. Like get involved, ask to stop into a school. If you are around Bismarck, come see me. Like my door is always open. Or I know a lot of other people who would be more than happy to welcome you in. I think that if you are considering education, that's the first and foremost, like you need to get into classrooms and really remind yourself to just check. Is this what I want to do? Because even from the time I was in first grade, like things have changed. Things have changed since I left high school. So just making sure that it is what you think it is. also just like kind of like this podcast, right? Like, what's your why? And I think that at the end of the day, your why really needs to be for students and to be thoughtful of that. So once you've gone into classrooms or you've gotten a good idea, like this is definitely what I want to do, my advice is to just continue to be available. Don't overspend yourself. Don't burn yourself out really fast, but be available to opportunities that come your way, especially to just get engaged in interacting with students and with the school systems around you. Those relationships matter. The relationships with your students and the relationships with the other professionals. And those are ultimately the people who will become your circle, who will help you through the highs and the lows of education. You need each other, which takes me to my very last thought with this is just to be a team player. To be a team player, and you will be overwhelmed and you will be really passionate and excited and creative, all of the things. But if you can be a team player and add to your team what you can, and also let other people help carry the weight of the load of teaching, you'll just be really thankful that you can. And if I can add one last piece, like, take your personal days, like it's okay to be sick, like to take care of yourself, because our wellness really matters and we can only truly pour out of what we have inside of us.
That's absolutely right. And you were talking about changes, and I'm curious, what's one thing that you think maybe if we changed would make education better?
Gosh, does it have to be realistic?
No, not at all.
I just think time to collaborate as professionals would be one thing that would really make education as a whole better, because I think we would, if we had more time to collaborate and get our ideas out, even, time to prepare. It sounds really silly because it's like, oh, you have your lunch or you have recess or your kids go to music, but oftentimes we don't. The outside perspective doesn't know, like we might have a meeting or we might be, doing a team planning thing, or by time you take your kids to recess, stop and use the bathroom, fill up your water bottle, you have 5 minutes. So truly, I think that time is just something, it's of the essence. But if we had time, I just think we could move mountains for students. We could plan to share our students more, to collaborate across grade levels even, to give students exactly what they need. But I definitely think, like, if you could grant my wish, just a little bit more time to be my best for them.
Why should students consider a career in education, Abby?
Oh, because educators shape the future. And we all want a little bit, I don't know. I think like you want to change the world. Like you want to do what you can with what you have. And educators and education shapes the future. And if we believe in children, we need to believe in teachers. If we believe in teachers, we can believe in our communities. We can just believe in one another. And I don't expect every student to get out of education and be a teacher, right? But we have so many important people, whether they're a cashier at a store for us, or they're changing my tire because I might have a flat. Maybe they are the doctor helping my mom through treatment. Like everybody matters, and teachers shape the future. Without teachers, we couldn't have everybody, every other profession. We couldn't have people, following their passions.
Yeah, that is a great answer. I think I know nothing about cars, and the kids in my room that do, I think, man, I would love to know what you know. And so that is, we're laying the groundwork for those kids to become great mechanics or plumbers or whatever, because I know none of that. So building off of that, and I'm really excited to hear your answer on this one, Abby, because in the last year or so, I've seen a lot of teachers kind of around your age that are getting out of the education field. And I guess we'd like to know, what is your why for staying?
Oh, yes. I think it's very similar to that piece of advice. My why for staying is for the kids. One, I love education. I believe in education, and I believe in our future generations. And I feel very called and led to share what I know, whether it's relationally or emotionally or academically with these students. I want to make an impact. And I feel like this job is purposeful, it's meaningful, and there's just so many avenues that I can take here, whether just in my classroom to impact each and every student. So yeah, I'm in it. I'm in it because kids matter, because they matter to me, because I believe in education. And I find so much purpose in the work that I do.
That's great. Thank you, Abby. This kind of conversations make me want to keep going for a long time. They are uplifting, and I wish that more of our profession could get into these conversations and have the time to do it. I think, like you said, time is a huge thing for educators, and I wish we all had time to just sit and share our whys. I think we'd be doing pretty well then.
Thanks for listening to What's Your Why? For Bret Dockter, I'm Tom Gerhardt. Hi, Abby DuBord, Bismarck Public Schools. Thanks for joining Bret and I on this edition of the What's Your Why podcast.
Thank you.